Chapter 13. Auction House. Although Heavy Iron City was only a small city in the Great Tang Country, it was home to one of the few important resources of the Great Tang Country's cultivation world, heavy iron. Thus this small city was very popular with merchants coming and going from all over the country. Early in the morning, the warm sunlight poured down. Kang Chon strolled on the wide streets of Heavy Iron City. The shops on both sides of the street were already open for business, the yelling of some big and small vendors endless. What a thriving and energetic small city. This was Heavy Iron City. Kang Chon smiled faintly and disappeared into the endless stream of people. Although Kang Chon used to hide in his home and cultivate hard, rarely coming outside to shop, but he had after all lived here for more than 10 years and was very familiar with everything in Heavy Iron City. After turning a few corners and stepping over an ancient bridge, Kang Chon arrived at the center of Heavy Iron City in no time. The Heavy Iron City's workshop market. The so-called workshop market was actually a collection of various shops selling cultivation items, and there was even a plaza dedicated to supplying scattered cultivators to set up stalls. Because cultivation was prevalent in the flood continent, almost every city would have such a market, and each market was the most lively place in the city. At this moment, even if it was early in the morning, Kang Chon had already discovered that there was a sea of people in the market, especially the carpets set up by those scattered cultivators, which were spread all over the square of the market. Some of the Heavy Iron City's cultivators began to wander around one carpet after another, starting their own Taobao journey. Most of the things sold by the scattered cultivators are relatively mixed. What thousands of strange things, of course. Most of them are rubbish goods, but there is no lack of some treasures. The key is to look at your eyesight. This kind of Taobao is very popular with the young children of Heavy Iron City. Kang Tian has often heard that the children of the family like to come here to Taobao, and there is even a lucky guy to buy a powerful martial arts skill at a very small price. Of course, this kind of lucky people are very few. Kang Chon was also quite interested in Taobao, but right now he didn't have the time to waste on this. He was going to go to the surrounding shops and start acquiring some of the materials for refining the return to origin pill. According to the Dan Emperor's list of pills, Kang Chon bought all the auxiliary materials and then came to the most lively place in the marketplace, Jinji Auction House. Jinji Auction House was the largest auction house in the entire Great Tang Country, and the owner behind it was the Jin family, one of the 4 major cultivation families in the Great Tang Country. In the Great Tang Country, apart from the royal family, it was the 4 great cultivation families that were the strongest and most extensive. Among them, the Jin family was the most powerful. They were the richest and controlled a great deal of the cultivation resources of the Great Tang Country's cultivation world. And because Heavy Iron City was rich in heavy iron, it was fortunate enough to gain the opportunity to have the Jin family build an auction house distribution here. And every now and then, some high-level cultivation pills, techniques, and magic weapons flowed out from here. In the entire Heavy Iron City, the Jinji Auction House was a place where some children of the world's families often came to. Of course, to come to this kind of place, one could not do so without a large amount of money. My lord, welcome to our Jinji Auction House. May our sincere service bring you convenience. As soon as he entered the Jinji Auction House, he was greeted by a young and beautiful maid, wearing a blue uniform, full of professional smiles and a pleasant voice that sounded very comfortable. Kang Chon was not unfamiliar with this. Every guest who came to Jinji Auction House would be accompanied by a chambermaid. God knows where the auction house found such beautiful chambermaids, and each one of them was also tuned to be so professional. May I ask if the gentleman is here to participate in the auction, or to consign items? The maid asked with a smile. Both. Kang Chon said indifferently. He had followed his grandfather to this auction house a few times. when he was a child and knew the procedures here very well. May I ask which category the item that the gentleman is sending for auction belongs to? The maid smiled and continued to ask. The category of pills, Kang Chon said, but his gaze was directed towards the entrance of the auction house, where a couple slowly walked in. It was a pair of young men and women. The man was handsome and extraordinary. His gaze was full of arrogance, and only when he looked at the young girl beside him did a trace of strange fire flow out. The young girl's black hair hanging shoulder, eyebrows curved, eyes watery, face red light. Pretty face, like blowing that is broken. Delicate body voluptuous and not sea meat, delicate and if no bone. The person who came was Li Chonjiao and Wang Ting. As Kang Chon surveyed and discovered them, they also discovered Kang Chon, and a teasing voice came out at once. Yo, isn't this the genius young master Kang Chon? Why have you come to the auction house? Oh, I almost forgot. There's still a month and a half until your bar mitzvah. If you still can't build your foundation, you're going to be kicked out of the Wang family. You're here to buy elixirs for cultivation. Right, say it. What do you see? This young master will buy it for you. Li Chonjiao's eyes were filled with mockery. He looked condescendingly at Kang Chon. His tone was full of charity. Next to him, Wang Ting, with a bemused gaze, hadn't said a word since the beginning, as if she hadn't seen Kang Chon. Kang Chon's face was bland. His eyes looked to the side of the maid, who was staring blankly at Li Chonjiao, and frowned. Can you take me to appraise it? Yes, you follow me. The maid turned back to her senses at the words and instantly turned red and said in a hurry. Kang Chon ignored Li Chonjiao and Wang Ting and followed the maid away. HMPH, a waste is a waste, even with the help of pills. You won't be able to build a foundation. Sister Ting, let's go. I heard that the auction house got in some resident pills the other day that can retain youth for 10 years. It's just right to give them to Sister Ting. Li Chonjiao disdainfully glanced at Kang Chon's back and revealed an adoring smile to the young girl on the side. Then, little sister will thank brother Chonjiao first. Wang Ting smiled shyly. Inside the appraisal room, Kang Chon followed that maid and met an old man. Although the old man was old, his eyes shone brightly and he appeared experienced. What kind of elixir do you want to consign for auction? Please allow the old man to take a look. The old man glanced at Kang Chon. A look of disdain flickered in his eyes as he said indifferently. Kang Chon sniffed and took out a small vial. He opened the mouth of the vial, and immediately a clear fragrance of the elixir spread throughout the room. Ha! The old man's nose twitched, and the light in his eyes flashed. His expression suddenly became much more grave. He had thought that a hairy kid couldn't take out any precious things for auction. But he didn't want to be surprised this time, just based on the aroma. He knew that the pills inside this vial were definitely not bad. Kang Chon took out 5 golden pills from the bottle and handed them to the old man on the opposite side of the room, and said indifferently, I'm going to auction off these 5 foundation building pills. The old man took the pills and was about to check them up when he heard Kang Chon's words. He immediately jumped in surprise and exclaimed, What? Foundation building Dan? You're a foundation building Dan. What? It's not right. Kang Chon was puzzled at his words. This was definitely the Dan Emperor's refined foundation establishment pill. Was it different from the foundation establishment pills in the outside world? That old man also reacted at this time. Knowing that he had lost his temper, he hurriedly waved his hand and said in a respectful tone, Your Excellency, wait a moment. The foundation building Dan is an extremely high-grade elixir. The old man's rank is not enough to appraise it. Allow me to ask to report it to our principal. After saying that, he put down the 5 foundation building pills. Kang Chon nodded when he heard this. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This foundation building pill was indeed an extremely high-grade pill. Just look at the difference in the old man's expression before and after he knew how precious this pill was.